truth to this is that at least they're going to know the facts.
No.
Not really.
Which is
I
gonna
think,
make
I think we'll be ready.
it tougher
Call the meeting to order.
to oppose it, so.
Yeah.
Heather, should we do a roll call to start?
Sure.
You have anybody on the phone?
Roger Olson's on the phone.
Super.
Okay. Dr. Mahoney,
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn, Mr. Grinberg,
Here.
Mr.
Here.
Banyo,
Here.
Mrs. Sherling,
Here.
Mr. Peterson,
Here.
Mr. Campbell,
Here.
Mr. Wayland,
Here.
Miss Williams, Mr. Hendrickson, Mr. Paulson, Mr. Thorsted, Mr. Olson. I thought he was here.
Me have a hard time finding the unmute button, riding in a combine or something.
He said he's on, so.
You got him, Brian?
Hey, Roger's here.
Super. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Report, PMC report.
Good afternoon, Robert Cowan with PMC. So for November, the recent activities, we have the County Road 17 temporary bypass is open and operational. That was on Tuesday, October 31st. So doing well there. County Road 81 roadways has opened for traffic, so we have one layer of pavement on that project. We presented the draft 2018 cash budget to Finance Committee tomorrow. We'll be bringing that forward sometime in December to the board for approval. And Oxbow home removals continue and should be completed by the end of December as far as all the one house remaining. And then as the Governor's Task Force, we know have been meeting this week as well as their technical advisory group, sub-meeting also. And then most other works are currently on hold or doing winter operations. December priorities is still to continue with the Governor's Task Force Technical Advisory Group as needed for support. We'll present the 2018 budget recommendations to the board, and then we'll finish up the Oxbow home removals and construction and continue dialogue with the three P3 proposers, as well as supporting the Diversion Authority through the temporary injunction. So any questions or comments?
Any questions by the group?
Okay.
Thank you.
Overall program status to date, expended $400 million out of the $2.2 billion through the end of November. That includes some accruals that we have in process. As far as 2017 cash budget, we've expended $65 million out of the approved $241 million overall to date through the end of November. So any questions or comments? No. All right. Continue with the construction update. In-town levee work is substantially complete. We are initiating just some final responses to one of the contractors for A1, A3. On the pump stations, just the final thing with the transducer, getting that switched out to address the electrical performance. Then waiting on the final submittals for F1N on the flood wall. And then the generator work continues for F1S flood wall associated with the City Hall work, kind of in conjunction. But all of the work is complete. And then F2, the only thing remaining there is just a grow in, which we'll determine next spring as far as how the grass is acceptable or not. Then for 42G, all the planning is in place, and we'll do the live staking will be pushed into the springtime. At Oxbow Hickson, Baki, we have, like I mentioned earlier, one house remains for the 43 E2E contract on Schnell Drive. Substantial completion for E2F on Riverbend's been met on 11/1, and then waiting on the remaining punch list items, which is landscape related, and some of any remaining backfill will be pushed into the spring. For CD, as I mentioned, Highway 81, the first lift of pavement's been completed. That's open to traffic. They're currently in winter operations, and they'll continue with the pump station construction throughout the winter. Then for 28A, as I mentioned, the bypass was completed and is currently open for traffic. All right. Any questions?
Questions of the group? Chad and Mary, is the county happy when those roads are done?
We had a little bit of pain down in Oxbow, but my engineering team and our construction team have managed to see us through.
Good.
We have one little issue we'll discuss as soon as that was my email to Jeff. We've been doing that right now here. Once we figure out what our plan of attack is, we'll bring that up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a core report today? No. Discuss the executive director search. Who's got that? Mike?
Yep.
So knowing how long it takes to get people to apply and come forth, we were thinking about maybe we ought to bring this back up and talk about it a bit. Anticipating December 15th, hopefully the governors have a solution going forward. And if that would happen, it would appear that that may be a perfect time to have an executive director or start thinking about when to get to all the tasks that would have to be done.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of Authority. What I'm passing out is your initial position profile for the executive director position. And what I thought I would do today is just take a minute and briefly recap your process from the last search. And we started actually about a year ago. It was January of 2017, soliciting various consultant proposals. The board in February selected CPS HR Consulting. CPS was selected in February 23. We did some outreach with the board in March and in April, and then began our recruitment in May and in June, and then came back in July of 2017 to conduct the first interviews. We also did our critical thinking and writing assessments at that time, and then had a second candidate back in late August. I believe it was August 28 of 17, and then it was, of course, just a few days after that, I believe on September 7th, that we got the news of the injunction and suspended the activities. So just as a recap of what was developed, that position profile that we handed out today was developed, other recruiting materials, the position profile itself, it can be found on page 3 and page 4 of that brochure. And then we also developed a variety of schedules, tours, informational sessions, community outreach, background checks, other reference materials for the candidate search. The good news is that to reboot that process would not take the kind of time it took previously. We really have that ready to go. It would just be a matter of populating the calendar and the schedules again. We really created that the first time and can reuse that if that's the board's desire. So as a few board members had requested at the time of this meeting, at the time it was scheduled, I believe there was some interest in talking about the future of the job description, the future of the use of a consultant, and then what that timeline might look like to the mayor's comment here in late 17, early 18. So happy to answer any questions that you have. I should make one last note, and that is as it relates to CPS. CPS, per the terms of the agreement that the board authorized last year, or earlier this year rather, CPS is on a fee retainer only at this point. If the board desires to continue to work with CPS, just travel expenses would be the obligation of the board. There would be no new retainage for the actual search fee. They worked on a specific engagement that said they would work until a candidate was selected and brought to the job and to the project. So they would continue to do that if that's the desire of the board, just for their incidental travel expenses and the expenses of the candidates, or the board could go in a different direction, whatever it would like to do. So just wanted to highlight that as I wrapped up my brief comments. Thanks.
Couple things, Mike, is that I think there was some discussion about the education experience that we would need with this person. And I heard from some members, do we really need an engineer? Would you consider other qualified people?
Right, that was a specific topic that came up, I think, as a debrief comment after the first go-around, and yeah, a variety of perspectives on that question, certainly, and I think one of the certainly strong attributes of any candidate is going to be the ability to work with the governing board, make sure that we're developing some administrative procedure and policy for the first few staff hires that are going to join that new FMDA organization. So, Mayor, to your point, you're correct. That's a completely legitimate discussion point as we talk about future, should we require it. We also had I believe, an advanced degree was preferred. It wasn't required. A bachelor's degree was required. And then we also had laid out some other experiences that we wanted to see with complex project management. So we can certainly revise this and change it up however the board would wish.
Mayor Shirley?
Thank you. Could you remind me again, what was the fee that we obligated ourselves to?
The initial engagement with CPS was, I believe, on the order of $15,000 to $20,000 plus travel expenses. I'm going to say we're about $25,000 in total. And again, that would just be for Pam's time to return to Fargo with candidates to conduct a second interview. That'd be the only additional expense of the board, but that is customary in this world that many of these search consultants work until a candidate is placed in the position. So that is very much standard language. But we also had other incidental expenses with advertisements and other ad placements.
Sure. So, but we've already spent that money, and so it's not going to be an additional fee
No.
at this point.
Right. It would just be her travel to get here and then any other printing and advertising expenses.
We have had some local firms come forth as well that would like to be participating in that, so we may want to look at that cost factor-wise.
Okay. One of the things, I've been involved in this last year or two with a couple of different big searches for executive directors of other boards I'm on, and it seems like we've just gotten a lot more applications, well in excess of 100 for both of those positions that I looked at. So, and I don't know, maybe Pam had more and she didn't share with us, but you know, any way that she can expand her search and make sure that we're really combing the universe for the best person, I think would be advised.
Yeah, Pam had approximately 5,000 contacts electronically, phone calls, other emails with their databases. And then I can't recall her specific candidate pool that she had that was initially qualified, but I would say, and I recall her saying this, that the engineering degree requirement was certainly a barrier for some candidates who would not possess that, but may have had other administrative experience that was relevant. So I do recall that comment being made.
Chad Peterson?
Yeah, I think to that point, once we diversify the professional we're looking for, the problem is we started with a low salary for someone like a civil engineer, where you're not going to attract a rock-solid candidate for $150,000. It's not going to happen. These guys are city managers making $250,000 or more in managing small cities in California. So once we diversify who we're looking for in terms of, I think you need a lawyer or a construction manager, and you make public, we're willing to pay $200,000+ for this, plus Cadillac benefits in terms of retirement, Cadillac benefits in terms of health. You're going to get a lot more people showing up at the door.
Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor. To me, this is a sensitive deal for us to be talking about right now. I'm more interested right now in getting the administrative assistants to help us once this task force is complete. My assumption is their recommendations are going to come to this board. And with that being said, there are probably still going to be, I'm thinking out loud here that there are going to still be some unsettled issues. A permit isn't going to be granted on the first day a recommendation comes before us by anybody. And so it seems to me, I've been watching some of these task force meetings. I've seen all of them, as a matter of fact, whether in person or on fmdiversion.com. And I think it's critically important that we provide as much assistance to the engineering and all those areas, and I can just imagine the funding that's going on, you know, the Nathans of the world over there, and how those departments are being inundated with the additional work. And I think us focusing on helping with that over the next even 6 months is more important right now than this executive director position is something that I think can wait till we know what we have for a project. And then go forward there. I just think we need to focus on our communications with whether it's the DNR, the JPA, the task force. I'm not sure that the task force on 15th is just going to say, oh, we're done. Maybe there's going to be an extension of that. We don't know. But for us to go out there and right now start talking about an executive director position, it seems to me like we're putting the cart before the horse here.
Well, Kevin, I wouldn't necessarily, we're going to advertise right now, but I think what we really want to do is redefine it. Because to Chad's comment is I think our salary was little, we weren't quite sure what it was, and the candidate kept moving it higher and higher, and we all realized if we maybe started at a different level, we'd have a different amount of candidates coming through. Two is there's the question of whether we could locally just do this search locally with a company as well, if you change the definition of what it is. So I wouldn't disagree with you that we kind of want to see what happens the 15th, but should we take the time, because it looks like now our next meeting will be December 21st more than likely. So let's say things go well on the 15th, there may be a lot of action on the 21st that we have to start engaging different things to happen. What I really want the board to look at is just to look at this carefully and give Mike and Robert the recommendations you have of now that we've had a chance to rethink it, because I think our last candidate brought some questions forth, and we all learned a little bit, I think. And Chad, with your construction background too, I mean, you asked some different questions and brought up some different issues, but if we could more tightly, I think, define the salary, and then we could more define the job. And I think initially we thought somebody was going to come in. I think Mike and Robert have been doing a good job of trying to figure out all the different relationships of our consultants, which was part of that, what that executive director was going to do. But so any other comments or questions? So I guess, Michael, could we leave it at this? We'll send you suggestions and bring it to you, and then perhaps we could redefine what we think the job would be and just start to get it prepared. To Kevin's comment is that we might not quite be ready the 21st. Maybe,
Happy to do that, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Authority. So what I'll also do is make sure that those members who are not present here today get a copy of the position profile, and we'll just ask that if anybody has comments or feedback, send them to me. We'll certainly put that together, and we'll report to the board on December 21, and so that you can make that decision about how you want to proceed. So thank you.
Very good. Item 6, public outreach. Roger, do you have that?
Just wondering if Kevin would comment about yesterday.
Sure.
Okay, Kevin will take it.
I can do that. We had a very limited meeting yesterday, and our focus or the discussion was primarily on the update of the task force meetings that are going on and the logistics and all of that thing. And one of the things that that was brought up there, and I say this, and I don't know who I'm talking to regarding this, but I myself, for example, on the Sunday night, I knew there was going to be a meeting on Monday morning, but I had no clue where and what time the meeting was at. And I know that there was some Moorhead residents inquiring the same thing, and nobody knew where to go to find the information and where these task force meetings are at. So for whoever's out there who's involved with the planning of these task force meetings, for the information for the public to be able to know when and where these meetings are at, I think is important. We were calling around last, I ended up...
Rocky, can you address that, please?
I ended up, of course, just emailing to one of our fellow commissioners who sits on the task force, and I got the information, but not everybody has that access, and so I think it's important that we have that availability.
Yeah, it was a good discussion by the outreach committee, and the members were not alone in that questions. We've asked that question a lot as well. Both governors' offices are working to define the agenda, and I think it is a common theme that the agenda doesn't get finalized until, shortly before the meeting, and sometimes the location isn't always sought. But I think the locations are firm now for the next meetings, and they'll all be at 10 o'clock, alternating between the Dome and, and the campus in Moorhead. And so that should be good, but we'll make sure to get those on the website as soon as we find out about them. But it is dependent on us finding out about them as well.
Very good, thank you. Then, lastly, I mentioned before that all of these task force meetings and all of the handouts and everything are available on fmdiversion.com, and I would certainly encourage everybody to go in and view those meetings. You'll find that they're researching some of the things that we've been spending 9 years doing, and I think it's becoming clear that we have looked at in excess of 70 different types of alternatives in this process, and this task force is learning that. And I just think that it's important for the public. I don't care whether you're for this project or you're against this project, but I think it's important or good for you to go to that. And again, it would be on fmdiversion.com. There's my public outreach spiel for the day.
Thank you. Roger, anything else to add?
Kevin did a good job there. Thanks.
Okay. Mark, do you have something to say today? Mark Nesbitt? Anything to say?
Oh, in my normal spot, yes, I would say that from the Chamber Task Force, Ellie Peterson has done a great job coordinating. She's going to be moving on to the next step in her career, so she won't be with us, but the Chamber continues to be committed to the efforts ongoing. And I would say, now this is me stepping across the normal bounds, but goodwill between Moorhead and Fargo with the Holiday Lights Parade that takes place next Tuesday night. So a little bit of holiday cheer coming your way.
Very good. Tony Grinberg has to leave a little bit early, so could we go to action items? Would that be all right if we go to the finance report, if everybody else is okay with that?
I'll ask Robert if you want to start from the bottom on finance 8C contracting actions.
Sure, I can do that. All right, contracting action, just to report out co-executive directors, task order amendments. We have 3 here. Task order 14, amendment 7, HMG. This is adjusting the budgets for incorporating the MSA that was back in May of $5,000. Task order 15, amendment 6, that's just incorporating the MSA comments, no dollars. Then task order 16, amendment 7, increase of $260,000. That's to support the governor's task force from a technical aspect. So those have been approved by the co-executive directors. On the next page, additionally, task order 19 is just a closeout amendment, reduction of $61,000. And then the last one, task order 1, amendment 1 for materials testing for Braun Intertech in the amount of $60,862. Any questions?
Any questions? You want to go to the next ones?
Okay. These are construction change orders. Task order 28A, or work package 28A, is incorporating work change directive that was previously approved for the temporary bypass. Additionally, ditch cleaning, reshaping, and also standby and partial demobilization charges in the amount of $469,811. And the work change directive, just kind of give you a breakout of the cost, $261,000. Ditch cleaning was $23.5, and the demobilization costs were $185,000. So these are costs that I'm also tracking separately as injunction impact cost as well, because these were costs associated with that. So I have that as a separate accounting. And also continuing on, Snell Drive, Smith & Son 6200, that's a relocation of a temporary access road point associated with moving the houses so we can maintain access for all the contractors working in that kind of congested area. The next item, 43E2F for Landwehr 4383, that is a temporary golf cart path to allow access to the older holes and from a safety aspect as well. Then the last one is the one that you have in front of you that is an addendum, is 42F1S, change order 19, industrial builders 22,556. This is adding the generator exhaust system, since this is a combined project, kind of sharing that generator for support of the pump station and the new city hall.
They have a motion, then that'd be 8C, right? Recommended actions?
Correct.
So moved.
Your second?
Second.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just so in our packet, 8C did not have WP 42F1S in its original packet, then.
Correct.
So has that one and all of these been through the finance committee? Even the last one was?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that.
Yep.
It just came up. They didn't know
Yeah,
it wasn't in the
okay.
bidding. Roll call vote?
Dr. Mahoney?
Okay.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Committee report, Tony, you want to give that, or do you want to go to the voucher?
Can we do 8B, vouchers?
Okay,
Everybody should have a copy 8B.
2,700, or 2,706,501.
Move for approval and answer any questions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions on the items? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Vano,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Wayland,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Committee report?
Couple comments on the committee report. Even with my glasses on, I believe expenditures year-to-date, or total for the project, 398 million. Trying to be corrected, might need a new set of glasses, but 398 million. Second page, our net cash position right present is 72 million. On the third page, you'll see the FY 17 approved budget and the remaining balance. For obvious reasons, we will not be expending the full budget for this year. Largely with land acquisitions and slow down with engineering because of the injunction. So more details to follow as you get into 2018 as we move forward, but that would be the short report.
Thank you. You got all your action items done. I can go to Mary Sherling with the land.
Let me just add that Finance Committee yesterday also has, I believe you'll mention with a schedule for December, we will have a dedicated budget meeting on December 13th, one topic only, and work with various details and get into the details of the budget in two different scenarios. At present, like this to understand where we're at, and then propose next year, making some assumptions. And then we recognize that once December 15th comes, and if there is a compromise in the direction, that'll require an amendment of the budget, but we'll have a little better description to share on December 20th, which will be the second finance meeting in December, and I believe you'll talk about the December 21st meeting, but we kind of look at a high level that knowing what's to come, but the planning required, we'll be able to adjust that, but really have a full deep dive on the details of this budget as we close out the year, and then start working into 2018, which could take a few months, not knowing what recommendations are coming to figure out what the final budget is as we move forward in 18. I just shared that as some backdrop.
So as Kevin was mentioning too, with waiting for the task force, what they do, our next meeting theoretically is supposed to be November 30th, and we don't have a lot on the agenda, so thought we probably would want to cancel that. But we did want to move the next meeting then back 1 week, because we otherwise would meet just before the task force is supposed to report off on the 15th. And we felt if we met on the 21st, then we'd have maybe a better idea. Now, their decisions may be delayed, but at least we'd have a better idea where to go. And the Budget Committee has kind of two different options. If we're shutting things down to a certain extent, that will be one budget. But then if we have to bring everything back up, that would be a different budget. So we just felt it'd be better to have the 15th decision, and then by the Finance Committee will have an opportunity to meet prior to our meeting on the 21st, and then come with a better preparation for us. And we also need you to know that we may have to delay the final financial budget till January, because it may take 30 days to rework it. So that's where we're at.
Mayor, can I just ask, so the meeting on the 14th has been moved to the 21st. Are we still intending to have the public outreach and land management on the 13th? Is that still the plan for those?
That would be up to your committee. You could either meet that week or the next week, whichever works for your team.
Okay. I still have it in my calendar for the 13th, and I don't know, we normally have those on the day before the diversion meeting, so I don't know if those are going to be.
Well, my thoughts are is if you have a good decision on the 15th, you may want to have a different type of meeting on the 20th.
Okay, well, I put that out there for the chairs of the two committees.
So if we could we just entertain that question about should we go to December 21st? Can I have a motion?
I would move, sir.
And I would second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aye.
And we'll cancel the 30th meeting if that's okay.
and I'll send out those so that they're correct on your calendar. I'll do that tomorrow.
Land management.
And I would also entertain moving land management up to the 20th then, or the 19th, or whatever day that would be.
Be the 20th.
20th?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that would be a smart idea.
Okay.
So,
We need to vote on that, Heather? Or- No, they can just do that.
I'll put it in the notes.
Okay.
okay, great. Well, land management continues to pursue the flowage easement valuations. We did not meet this month, but you do have item 7B in your packet, which is the current phases of the acquisition areas. So really not much to report unless you have a question for myself or Eric. Eric has anything to add. We're just in a holding
Well,
pattern.
at the task force meeting, I'm trying to recall who it was either somebody in water management or something brought up a cost per acre. And I was just curious about that, a $3,300 per acre payment. And I was just trying to, Eric, try to figure out what he was speaking to. Was this in water retention projects? That's what they're paying people if they took the land, or is it, what type of comment was that?
The discussion, if we're on the same page, the discussion at the task force meeting was a presentation by Bruce Albright, who's a manager of the Buffalo Red Watershed District, and they have a small, I shouldn't say small, a retention project that has been built and designed where they are able to farm inside of the retention area and still use it for retention. And there were some questions about what easement payments were for that project and similar projects in the Buffalo Red Watershed District. And I believe Bruce Albright's answer was, on average, they've paid close to $3,000 per acre on private land. But I guess I would just point out that, you know, those situations are unique and different, much like ours will be unique and different. The frequency of flooding, the risk of flooding, the duration of flooding, all of those dynamics are different for every easement area. And so I think there was, you know, maybe some cheering if people were anticipating getting $3,000 an acre for an easement. In our situation, I think you're all aware the project, as we know it today, would operate roughly once every 10 years. And I think that's much less frequent than some of the retention sites over in Minnesota. And so I have to suspect the easement value would reflect the frequency of operation. But all that being said, you know, we've made some estimates for the value of easements on this project from a budgeting standpoint. And as Ms. Sherling noted, we've been working towards, you know, hiring some appraisers to give us a better marker in the sand of what those easements would be. We've been hesitant to pull that trigger because we don't know exactly where the impact area is. We have a model today that we're pretty confident with today's project, but as the governor's task force continues to work, it's likely that the project will change, which will then change the impact area. And so we're sort of in a cat and mouse type game, or, you know, circular argument.
Good. Mary, just a question to you. The 15th, we decide a plan on where we're going, the path, the route, the amount of everything going on. Would land management then go full force in trying to find the flowage easements?
Absolutely, yes. And I mean,
And what would be the timeline that, once you kind of pull the trigger on that? Is it 30-day, 60-day? How long would that take to get an answer?
well, we're going to do a sample. Eric, maybe you can address that better than I can.
Yeah, so once we get a solution out of the governor's task force, there's likely going to be some additional hydraulic modeling to best define exactly the boundary of impacts. And I think that information is going to be essential for the appraisers. And so if the modeling work takes you know, if the governors can come up with a solution, probably going to have a pretty good concept, but not all the details. And so the details, maybe another, you know, few months to iron some of those things out. And then at that point, I think we'd be ready to hire an appraiser to move forward. The appraiser process is likely going to take a handful of months as well. And as Mary noted, we've talked about doing kind of a sampling first. If we're confident with the boundary and the impacts, there's probably no reason to do a sampling. We might as well just jump full speed into this. But nonetheless, that's going to take several months. Depending on which approach we use for valuing these easements, there could be a more robust study that would encompass the entire area, and that could be, you know, maybe a year-long type study, but the fruits of that work would pay off in the long run. And so there's a few sort of irons in the fire that we'll continue to evaluate as the governors work through their process.
Thank you. Is there anything else in the land report?
No, not from land management.
Very good. Thank you, both of you. Any other business at the DA board to have?
Mayor, I
Mary
would
Shirley?
just add that Cass County's been holding sessions with our legislative leaders throughout the county. Twice a month now, we've had several very positive meetings with those legislators, both within the city of Fargo, West Fargo, and throughout the rest of rural Cass County, just to update them on the impacts, particularly the road closures and some of those issues that they were getting calls on, and wanted to make sure that they understood where we were coming from and what could happen down in the future. And so I'm happy to report, I think those have been well received.
All those roads are open now, right? Is that correct?
They are,
Very good.
I believe.
Good. Any other business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much for making it today. I know it's a little tough. Minnesota had a big meeting.